I have, there goes my visual. And we have probably a slight apology. Ambassador Ilyana Siait from Palau has been called in to one of the negotiation rooms, and as will Dr. Michael Savendra. And he will need to run very soon, and that's what happens at this phase. But let me make a few introductory remarks. Thank you again, all of you, for being here. I'm Satendra Prasad, Climate Lead for Asia Pacific for APT Associates, based in Canberra. We are very happy to host this discussion. We want to encourage across the Asia Pacific, and indeed globally as an organization, countries to be ratcheting and raising their blue ambition. Yesterday was the Ocean and Nature Day, and you saw great excitement and enthusiasm. At this phase in COP, those of us who have been in COPs, we know we are both looking to a final outcome, but we also begin to have a more forward-looking perspective. And many of us, especially those of us in the Pacific, are beginning to think about what future COPs will hold. And it is with some excitement and expectation that the Pacific hopes that COP31 will that there will be agreement that allows the COP31 to be held in Australia and in the Pacific, which would be a great moment and a segue to helping raise the blue ambition much further. As a bit of a stock take, I'm generalizing at very high level, and of course speaking to the converted, those of you who have been following very closely the level of ambition on ocean, you know that this ambition level has been growing. It started from a low base, but at the most recent stock take now, someone correct me, there are 97 NEPs that have a blue component. Some 43 or 45 of them have a very significant blue component, and most of these countries are countries from the Pacific, the large ocean states. And so that provides a fantastic platform for raising the ocean component of NEPs and NDCs much further. And so the title, Let's Paint the NDCs as blue as possible. And that's a framing, but to raise the ambition level further doesn't come easy. The roadblocks are many, and I will not take away the thunder from our fantastic set of speakers. We have asked them to reflect on what will it take to raise the level of ambition. What could a target for a raised blue ambition look like around COP31? How far could countries go? And if they were really trying to raise the level of blue ambition, what should they be looking at? Are there technical set of constraints? Are there solutions that are not coming fast enough and in coordinated ways? Is the political will the missing part? Are all of the above the missing part? So these are some questions we have asked to reflect on. The outcome that we all want to encourage in the discussions today is to distill some of the early thinking of folks who are really drivers in this space and who have led much of the world's both imagination as well as the pragmatic gains that we have made on the ocean action for climate change, that we can distill them into what may begin to look like a COP31 target. So with these introductory remarks, I will first call on Dr. Michael Savendra. He is the Permanent Secretary Designate for Climate Change and Environment in Fiji, and presently with the UNDP as its climate specialist based in Tonga, a very seasoned hand. He'll make some remarks, and then he will have to depart for the negotiation rooms and take it from there. Thank you very much. Dr. Michael, you have the floor.
Malolele, because I'm based in Tonga, and Bula Vinaka, Excellency, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Um, I'm as ambassador has mentioned in my capacity as UNDP climate adaptation specialist, and also in as the incoming PS. It's a huge. I'm so grateful and honored to be delivering at least some of the work that we are doing or looking forward to doing in Fiji. Um, Let me start by acknowledging that as large ocean states, Fiji deeply understands the critical role that ocean plays in regulating our climate, enhancing the resilience of coastal communities, protecting biodiversity, and supporting livelihoods. Investing in the sustainable use and protection of our oceans for us is not just a ethical imperative, it's an economic necessity. And the ocean-based economy in Fiji contributes significantly to our GDP, fisheries, tourism, and other marine-related industries. However, the very foundation of these sectors is at risk due to the ongoing degradation of our marine ecosystems. Therefore, we stand at a crucial juncture where action is not merely an option, but it is an urgent requirement. We must leverage the financial mechanisms that align with our economic prosperity, with environmental conservation, and it is about adopting an holistic approach that integrates sustainable practices into our economic frameworks. You would hear from Coral and other colleagues on actually examples of what's going on the Pacific, and also the mention of the realities that 98% of our communities in the Pacific they live almost 1 kilometer away from the coastal, and but the Pacific Ocean is also 50%, accounts for the 50% of the tuna's spawning ground. So I think for us here in COP, especially for Fiji and for PSEEDS, one of the key things that we have been pushing for is the recognition of oceans across all thematic areas. And you would just see that the GGA text and the GST text is out this morning. It actually mentions marine ecosystems, and the continuous push for PSEEDS amongst within its negotiation group of IOCs on the recognition of oceans within the targets, within the thematic areas, because it is recognized in the CBD. It needs to cross-reference this as well. So just quickly, in terms of going forward, I guess some of the things that I want to bring to the floor is around the what we need to see going forward. I guess for coastal countries like Fiji, ocean-based mitigation action can help us to further increase our economic-wide ambition by providing additional means of reducing emissions or enhancing natural ocean-based sinks. Right now, the inclusion of ocean based sectoral targets, policies, and measures in our new and updated NDCs can be used strategically to send a clear signal to our investors, both private and public, to aid the direction of global financial flows to support the transition of the ocean economy and to the economic sectors as well. NDCs can also act as a roadmap for domestic and international private and public funding to catalyze holistic investment into actions that will both reap short term and long term economic, social, and environmental benefits for nation economies. Because the NDC encompass countries' short-term mitigation and adaptation priorities, they can also be useful as tools to promote the alignment in investment with national long-term priorities for the marine environment and also the land-ocean interface. I think such an alignment can better facilitate the sector's coupling solutions, such as the development of the ocean based renewable energy that also supports the development of zero emissions fuels necessary for decarbonization of our marine transport and to avoid the investment in stranded assets. Just quickly touch on some of the examples. One is the Fiji's national ocean policy. As you have, some of you may have seen it. We were one of the few PSEEDS countries to produce this policy, or first countries to produce this policy, and it points the way to achieving a healthy, I quote, a healthy ocean that sustains the livelihood and aspirations of the current and future generations for Fiji. The government currently, as I'm going into this role and I've been informed, is steadily working towards legislation, committing resources to ensure the healthy and productive ocean. I think at the core of the policy lays out Fiji's commitment to the 100% sustainable management of our ocean and its designation to the 30% of marine protected areas by 2030, which is also reflected in our GGA tax as we speak. Uh, while Fiji's updated NDCs does not explicitly mention blue carbon, it does call for a conservation of natural environment and biodiversity wealth, enabling sustainable long-term provision of ecosystem services, including carbon sequential potential. So, to further our efforts, we have partnered with the Government of Australia, Conservation International. We are looking forward to working with ABT on mangrove dwelling communities under the Australia Pacific Blue Carbon Program. And we are also working towards the Blue Prosperity Program with UNDP and Blue Economy, sorry. And then there's the Blue Prosperity Program as well with Arthur and the colleagues that will be shedding some lights. I think just in terms of before I conclude, just two important points that I would like to mention is as we are moving towards COP31, which is in which Australia is bidding for, and we are talking about oceans. And this is my my individual reflection. I think it's important that when we are talking about oceans, we are starting to put in place actions and priorities that actually will drive us towards painting the very narrative that we are trying to painting the NDCs blue. So I think it's a matter of getting together in our regional spaces, in our national spaces to try and work towards getting ocean interventions in line within the NDCs, within our adaptation strategies, within our mitigation strategies, so that when it comes to COP31, and if we are going towards painting our NDCs blues, we are creating a platform that will allow us to engage more meaningfully, and it will become a cross-section, not only a cross-sectional issue, but one of the priority issues, particularly given that if Australia does win the bid for COP31 and it is in the Pacific, this is our opportunity as Pacific brothers and sisters to come to this COP and contribute to the ocean narrative, because it is within our ocean. It is the very core mandate that grounds our livelihoods and our sustainable well-being, or our livelihoods, and it needs to be sustained. So just to conclude, I think my final 1 minute is just to reiterate that to unlock sustainable ocean finance for our nation, this is not just a goal. It is a commitment to safeguarding our heritage and securing a prosperous future. And together we need to forge a path towards a resilient and thriving ocean economy, one that sustains not only our livelihoods, but also the invaluable biodiversity that enriches our planet. Malopito and Vinakavalevu. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael, for those fantastic words, as well as the concluding comments on a pathway forward. Extremely helpful, and wish you good luck in the negotiations. Next, it is my great pleasure to invite Ms. Coral Pasisi, the Director of Climate Change and Sustainability of the Pacific Community. And for those who are not aware, Pacific Community is sort of, I don't know, our EU or our something like that, and fantastic ocean advocate. And also in this COP, many of you would have seen one of the smallest countries in the world, Niue, where she is from, inspiring the whole of this COP with its outsized blue contributions. And I hope she'll reflect on that a little bit. Coral, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and colleagues. A real privilege and pleasure to be here. Whakalofalahi atu. I am from the smallest country pretty much in the world, placed right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And SBC, from which I'm the Director of Climate Change and Sustainability, is it's like the UN of the Pacific, right? We are the same age, and we have 27 members that cover the entire Blue Pacific continent. And I think, and we're a science and technical organization, but we work very closely with the other intergovernmental organizations of the Pacific. I think a really important framing that we come to this really important topic with is our leaders have reframed the narrative of the Pacific to we are the Blue Pacific continent. And I think that that's a really important way to articulate what we bring to the table as countries. We are the custodians of nearly 30% of the world's exclusive economic zones. That is a huge part of the Earth's surface. It also covers the only healthy lung left in the world, and it supplies over 50% of global tuna supplies because they are managed sustainably, and this is the only region in the world in which that is done, and that is done through regional cooperation. So we have a really strong blue narrative from the Pacific, and it's, as my colleague Michael said, this is part of our nature, it's part of our culture. We come from thousands of years of custodianship of the ocean. So that's, for me, the context in which we come at this from a point of leadership towards COP31. So why was oceans not embedded in the UNFCCC at the outset? Why are we finding it so hard at this point to bring it in nearly 30 years later? It's because inherently in international law and policy, we have spliced up the environment, right? UNCLOS dealt with oceans, so we weren't allowed to touch that. UNFCCC covers this. The Biodiversity Convention covers something else. But in reality, all of these things are linked. And if you only look at the value of one dimension to that asset, you will only ever protect one element or progress one thing. And nature is connected, as are the people that live in it. So it's really important that when we look at an asset like the ocean, we are looking at its true value across all dimensions. So a first step for me in how we look to ensure that oceans is well and truly entrenched in the UNFCCC process, the Paris Agreement, and at country level, those NDCs, is really unpacking and understanding what that value brings to the different dimensions, from a mitigation perspective, adaptation, loss and damage, the finance, the livelihoods, all of those different dimensions, because that is the total value that if we embed ocean issues within NDCs and the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement, we will truly respond and see what the ocean can do for us in this space. So at country level, Niue has, as a country, has committed probably the largest part of its blue real estate, 40% of its exclusive economic zone and territorial waters, to a no-take zone. That's 127,000 square kilometres on Earth. And so this is something they did before they reflected it in the NDCs. It's not until this point they're reviewing that and saying, actually, how do we reflect that in the NDCs? And if you only looked at the importance of blue carbon, you would only put it in the mitigation space and possibly in the finance. If you only looked at it from a fish perspective, you'd only put it in food systems and maybe adaptation. In reality, it has a huge ripple effect across all of these. And so we have to unpack that value and embed it so that we understand what the outcomes are that we are contributing to by protecting this ocean space. And this is where things like marine spatial management planning is really important, right? We look at all the different types of uses, including conservation, and we pull that together and we cost that total value, both in how much it costs us to manage that effectively, but also the outcomes that then delivers, both to communities, but also to the rest of the world. How do we mobilize the money, though, for countries that make this protection when they are on the front line of the impacts and are least able to respond? How do we make it not an economic burden for them to lock up these resources and contribute to the global environmental good while still feeding their people and building resilience? And this is where the finance flows and our ability to reach those, it has a huge gap, a very unfair deal. $100 billion was the promise per year. 13 years later, our countries are accessing less than 0.22% of that $100 billion promise, not even 1%, and our countries are on the front line and contributed least to the problem. That's not a fair deal. How do we change that? How do we mobilize the investment to what is already great leaders in oceans and give them, empower them with the resources to continue to protect those global public goods and build their resilience at the same time? So after years of frustration in this space, Niue has set out to develop their own mechanism, because these big projects out of the GCF, the GEF, etc., which are 2, 3, 5 years in length, take 6 years from the point of which you have the priority to the point at which you have a first impact. Way too long. We've got 5 people in the environment unit and climate change. They are going to be gone by the time that comes around, right? So that modality of short interventions, even big finance in short periods of time, doesn't work. It doesn't work in the big countries, and it certainly doesn't work in small states. So we had to look at how do you create a mechanism that will reduce the transaction costs of having to write big fancy projects, lessen our need to deal with 50 different partners and all the requirements that they have for reporting, etc. How do we create a mechanism that fairly values what we're trying to protect, but doesn't come with all that baggage that we can't deal with? And so Niue has developed a fit-for-purpose financing mechanism, and it's a public-private trust called the Niue Ocean-Wide Trust, and it's between the government and a small non-profit organisation called Tofia Niue, which I have the privilege to support. And basically what we've done is we've taken the whole of the Moana Mahu area, which is 127,000 square kilometres. It has already been legally locked up. No-take zone. Fisheries is not displaced out of that space. It is completely locked up. And so we've costed, how much will it cost the country for the 20-year period to ensure that that's not a paper park? It actually has compliance strategy, it is enforced, and we are reporting on the protection of that space. And then how do we build the next generation of Niuean children to be the leaders of that into the future, to create sustainable blue economy businesses that are reinforcing of ocean protection in the long term? What's that going to cost us per year at a rate that our country can absorb? And that is how we reached the cost of what it would take for that whole asset to be managed effectively and have those outcomes into the future. Because conservation is, the value comes in the length of time as well as the strength of governance, right? So we want at least a 20-year period of lockup. So we multiply the cost per year by 20 years, and we forward sell that cost in a unit called an ocean conservation commitment. It started as a credit, but regulatory systems, long story, not ready for nature credits yet. So we call that an ocean conservation commitment, and we splice it into 127,000 pieces. So there are 127,000 OCCs for sponsorship. And it means that children, grandparents, corporations, bilaterals, anyone can contribute by purchasing one OCC or 100 or whatever. But they then become a part of the journey that commits and sees the value in this great asset and empowers the community and the country to protect that in a rate that is commensurate with their absorptive capacity. And so we launched the OCCs and the Now Trust at Climate Week in New York a couple of months ago. And the most overwhelming thing has been that we have like grandmothers in Germany and Italy buying an OCC for their child. Because when they buy it, they get a certificate that says you're a guardian of Moana Mahu, a pristine piece of ocean real estate in the Pacific Ocean that will be locked up as a period of 20 years, and the resourcing will go to supporting our resilience, our sustainable blue economy, which will support this in perpetuity. And we've got little businesses in Italy who are boutique and supporting the purchase. as well as big philanthropy. And so it provides the resources to Niue without 50 million reporting requirements. The same report and impact stories that we give to that grandmother in Germany is the same report that we give to BNA or CI for the 100 million that they are investing, 100 million, I wish, the 1 million that they are investing in OCCs. So this is an innovative approach that we've felt, if we can't go to the mountain, we're going to build the vehicle that will bring the mountain to us. And we don't need a big mountain, to be honest. We don't need heaps and heaps of money. We just need it in a way that can be delivered over a long period of time and which our country and community can actually absorb and build for the long term. And so I hope that this is an example of what might be replicated in other places, but still can benefit from the multilateral funds when they free up the difficulty that they currently have in accessibility for small island states. So thank you so much, Ambassador, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And some of my young UN colleagues are here as well. Happy to talk to people afterwards if they want to know more about it. Loilahi.
Thank you so much, Coral, and again for inspiring us into what is possible. But I will intervene before I call Penny. If you transpose that example onto UAE, it is or Azerbaijan, it is like asking UAE or Azerbaijan to shut down 20% of their oil wells, and that's the extent of the conservation that the small country has put up. Our next speaker is from another part of the regional architecture, the Pacific Regional Architecture, which is the office of the Ocean Commissioner. It's an office that is part of what is the Pacific Forum, to be based in Palau, and its director, Penny Sovinakama. Penny, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, I wanted to say at the outset, happy Sunday, everyone. If I was back home, I'd be watching my uncles in the pulpit, so this is the best that I could go on Sunday, being at the pulpit. But we're here at COP, and we're very delighted to be here and to join you all. It's so wonderful to see you all still having that energy, levels up there at this time of the end of the 2 weeks, so hope we can all make it through. But maybe just to contextualize things, the Pacific Ocean Commissioner couldn't make it this morning. Yesterday we met with the EU Commissioner on Ocean, and you know, the role of the Commissioner is sort of having the ability to step back from the technical work and trying to have a look at how, you know, these big pieces can all come together. So my spiel today will just basically be talking about that. You know, I'm not a climate expert. I'm involved in ocean policy space, so from the Commissioner's perspective, I'm hoping to provide you some ideas. I know that Coral has provided some very concrete ideas on how to move forward. Maybe also just to mention, to share here before my regional head, I'm also a member of a community in Fiji, where I hail from a village close by in the capital city of Suva. Our community, we've had a marine protected area for 25 years. And there's a perspective that I learned from there that I want to share with you today. And I think that's, for me, is one of the most important messages that I bring from my community level to here. And that is, so we had a village meeting and the community elders were asking, you know, most of the time we always distance ourselves from the environment. We distance ourselves from the, you know, we treat, or we look at them separately. The fish of the ocean and the trees, our environment. But actually, when you talk about the custodianship that Coral was talking about, we have a responsibility. And they were, the elders were telling me, imagine putting yourself at the fish. You're helpless. You can't make decisions that will change things for you when the temperatures are getting warmer, or when the environment, there's acidity levels grow higher. As a fish, you can't make those decisions. So, us as humans, we are placed on the top to make those tough decisions and to be able to change things. So I just wanted to contextualize that. And the IPCC report has talked about the policies need to harness the ecosystem as a whole. And that for me, when I see that from the IPCC report, it is the same message that the community elders were telling me, that the policies need to harness ecosystem as a whole when you derive solutions. So, and I wanted to emphasize there the importance of, our communities having that traditional knowledge. They too, for us, carry weight in terms of us moving forward this journey. Statistics-wise, the ocean is 70% of the globe. And of that 70%, 30% is from the Pacific Ocean. In total, it is 165 square kilometers. And out of that 165 square kilometers of the Pacific Ocean, 42 million square kilometers is from the Pacific. Now, million square kilometers, sorry. Yes, thank you, Ambassador. But I wanted to share that because from those statistics, we know that the ocean is the biggest natural resource that we have, and yet we are living it out of the climate solution equation. I think, and I agree with the point Coral made, we really need to see we need to, how to incorporate it all together, but also how the reasoning behind all these things to convince the people out there. Having said that, I wanted to mention that in the Pacific, our leaders have agreed to the 2050 vision. Vision 2050 is called the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific. It's where our vision, our leaders' vision on where they want to see our Pacific by 2050. So within that strategic framework, there's two important thematic areas: the ocean and climate, the ocean and environment, which is calling for halting biodiversity loss and the risk of extinction, the triple planetary crisis. And then from the climate and disaster perspective, it's talking about building resilience. So that, when you look at it from that perspective, and when you look at the NDCs, the commitments that our countries are making, there is an opportunity ahead. We are seeing that the stars are now aligning, that there is an opportunity for us to look at building this momentum. Because the NDCs, commitment by countries, there is direct correlation with what our leaders are envisaging in the 2050 strategy. So an ambassador had mentioned about COP31, as an opportunity. We are noticing that there's some positive progression in the negotiations. I haven't been there. I don't envy those people, but I think there is some modest progress being made. But with that connectivity and the possibility of us harnessing, and I agree with your initial statement, Ambassador, painting it as blue as possible, because not only blue is the solution, it is a number of things that will have to come together as part of the solution. So I will end by saying that, as mentioned, COP31, there's a possibility that it will be held in the Pacific region. We convened the event, the Commissioner convened an event a few days ago and talked about building a sea lane towards COP31. There is, I'm not, very involved into this process of COP, and I'm not a fan of it, but I must say that it's all the taboos on ocean here within the COP process. We hope that with the possibility of the Pacific hosting in COP31, that we will break all those barriers, that we will really be able to harness this. And there's an opportunity ahead. we have the tools and we have the information and we have I think the momentum to move forward, and I guess to be able to make that to paint the NDCs as blue as possible, we have to work together and journey together towards COP31. That is my message this afternoon, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Penny. And just to take 2 minutes to summarize what he probably glossed over some of the details. The Office of the Commissioner had a nice round table on 2 days back or 3 days back, where some similar discussions took place with the support of Kiribati and Palau. The President of Palau opened the session, and several other countries in the Pacific. One of the very practical ideas that some of the Pacific's leaders and OPOC and I hope SPC and others are beginning to think about is how to have integrated blue initiatives across the Pacific. The ideas are shaping up. I hope there's more momentum, and people, especially those who are at the coal face, take some energy from COP28 and stitch up, not stitch up, that's a very wrong word, but frame significant and bold, joined up initiatives across the whole of the Blue Pacific. It may have many elements. That was fantastic discussion, which I had moderated. One of the elements could be that the marine protected areas, such as Niue and Palau and all the others, Penny's home MPA, they all get integrated into one Blue Pacific wide sort of framework. They will not be joined up in the waters. There will still be large gaps, but they could be joined up as a framework of thinking about it around standards, and that gives scale, that gives lifts the ambition and aspiration. So it was a great discussion by Pacific's leaders, and I hope in the next year or so we'd be very happy to support that it takes root. Again, as I said, apologies from Ileana Syed, who's the ambassador for Palau. She was, we had thought very hard about some of her messages, and I won't speak for her, but she is Palau's ambassador. Palau is an ocean leader. Some 85% of Palau's waters are currently protected. It again gives the tension that when a small state, I never get tired of saying this, does marine protection on that scale. It is saying, and their only resource is tuna. If you took tuna away and said their only resource was oil, when you shut down 85% of your tuna revenue, you are shutting down 85% of equivalent of your oil revenue if it were in an oil country. So I think what Pacific is saying very loudly is that the transition away from fossil fuel is not an impossible proposition. They're doing this time and time again, and at some cost to themselves, but to the greater good of the planet. But she's also the chair of the Pacific Small Island States, and some of these ideas will be championed through the Pacific Small Island States, and she's also the incoming chair of the AOCs, the larger family to which small states belong in the negotiation processes here. And so we hope that some of these ideas will become even larger through the AOC's network in the year ahead. But it's a pity, but I think she has a written speech. I'll be very happy to share that. I have also with me Sarah from WTA. She'll introduce herself, and she'll be giving us some insights on some of the technical inputs that in lifting the bar on the blue component of NDC, some of the technical things that could be helpful. One of those things is how do you de-risk some of the ocean interventions to allow money to move in, to allow larger volumes of resources to flow in. I'll not again take the thunder, but thank you very much, and thank you very much for agreeing at short notice to share your thoughts. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Sarah Conway. I am with a group called WTW. We're a global risk advisory and solutions company. But maybe just rewinding quickly. So I started my career in traditional finance, and then back in 2007 pivoted to the conservation finance community and was actually based in Indonesia for about 5 years, supporting conservation projects throughout Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Have had the pleasure of visiting many of the Pacific Island countries. After spending time in the Pacific and Southeast Asia more broadly, I did a master's in environmental economics and climate change, and actually pivoted to the UNFCCC process, where I was on the US delegation for a number of years through the Paris COP, serving as the lead climate finance negotiator, which, as you can imagine, was a tricky gig. And it was actually with great thanks to my colleagues from the Pacific, members of AOSIS, who I think gave me some good street cred in the process, because they knew that I had full understanding and appreciation for some of the on-the-ground realities for the situations that their communities were facing. So anyway, all of that just to say that I hold the Pacific near and dear to my heart. So it's a real pleasure and privilege to have an opportunity to join you today. So thanks again. I guess fast forwarding to now, so WTW, I sit within a team called Disaster Risk Finance and Parametrics, which is a lot of words. Specifically, I support our ecosystem resilience portfolio. So the main, I guess, underpinning objective is, recognizing the interlinkages between ecosystems, nature, oceans in particular, and climate change, and the role in which those natural capital are both, supporting the global economy, helping to mitigate the impacts of climate change. They themselves are also under extreme pressure and threat of the impacts of climate-related events. So what we try to do is actually design parametric insurance solutions, and I'll pause actually, and I don't know, raise your hand if you've heard of parametric insurance, just curious. All right, a handful of people. But I guess for the benefit of maybe everyone else, just quickly, parametric insurance is a risk financing instrument, but it varies or is different from indemnity insurance. So parametric insurance pays out a pre-agreed amount to a policyholder linked to a predefined event characteristic, for example, wind speed. This predefined event characteristic is meant to serve as a proxy for loss or damage or impact. So unlike indemnity insurance, which necessarily requires a quantified loss and a sometimes lengthy loss adjustment process, parametric insurance is built on a transparent, objective, readily identifiable trigger, which means that it's actually opened up the possibility of deploying insurance for things like coral reefs and other natural capital assets and situations in which previously, through the indemnity side of the insurance market, was not at all possible. So pretty, again, nerdy but exciting stuff if you're into this type of thing. It also has the benefit of paying out really, really rapidly. So what we've seen in the application of parametric insurance for ecosystems and natural capital, sort of two clear sweet spots where it might add value. One is where you kind of really have, there's a high value associated with the quick disbursement of liquidity following a shock event. So for example, a hurricane or a tropical cyclone passes through and causes damage to a coral reef ecosystem. We understand from the scientist community that if you can actually get in the water within a sort of 30-day window and start, doing damage assessments, reattaching corals, the likelihood of being able to have a positive impact and bring that ecosystem back as close to the pre-event state as possible is dramatically increased. If you don't act within that window of opportunity, you lose the likelihood of being in a position to recover. So again, high value for that type of situation. We also see value in that type of case for livelihoods that are associated or linked to marine ecosystems in particular. So small-scale fishers who are increasingly impacted by bad weather that prohibits their ability to safely go out and fish. linking a parametric insurance product to that community and ensuring that if they encounter bad weather days, that they will receive a payout to offset their income losses. High value add. Another really interesting one, or the other sort of main place where we see the utility of parametric insurance for ocean ecosystems relates to sort of sovereign debt. So this is a little bit more nuanced, but basically we see value where if you need to guarantee that certain payments are made in situations, though, whereby their normal revenue stream is diminished or removed because of a shock event. So think about an island nation who has a severe cyclone passing through. Sometimes the impact on GDP can be rather dramatic in those cases. And therefore, it puts that country potentially in a difficult situation where they have to choose between continuing to service their sovereign debt commitments and also at the same time respond and recover to the event itself. So we actually developed the world's first resilience wrapper as part of Belize's debt conversion back in 2021. On the back end of that, the issuance of the blue bond benefited both from political risk insurance from the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, DFC, and also this resilience wrapper. And what we tried to do in this case, again, this is for now anyways, the only known sovereign debt example where the resilience wrapper has come into play. But we do see in the context of both scaling up overall ambition and inclusion of blue into NDCs, and also just kind of figuring out how we address both the fiscal risks and climate risks that are facing countries. Real application for the resilience wrapper in a number of other contexts. But let me just give you a little bit more background, I guess, on that particular transaction. So what we tried to do in that case was, use the objective criteria of hurricanes to act as the proxy for the scale of impact on the economy of Belize and therefore their ability to service debt. So looking back at history, we tried to isolate what climate-related events caused a greater than 15 to 20% impact on their GDP and would then reasonably have impacted their ability to service their debt. We came up with 3 triggers in this case. So it's a sort of single, they're all independent, but if any of these 3 triggers happens, 3 triggers. One is just related to wind speed, sort of severe hurricane. The second is multiple hurricanes in the same season. And the third is a moderate hurricane, but coupled with high rainfall. If any of those 3 triggers occurs, the government of Belize is waived of their next semi-annual debt servicing payment, and instead the insurance payout steps in and covers it. So in our mind, it's a pretty big innovation and leap forward from the normal hurricane pause clause, which I think you might be familiar with. That's I think gaining a lot of traction. The hurricane pause clause, I mean, it's not a bad thing, of course, but it really is just shifting the payment schedule into a more climate uncertain future. Whereas with the resilience wrapper, you're actually just replacing, you're able to maintain the same terms and structure of the overall debt, but alleviate the country of having to make the payments so they can instead, of course, focus on the immediate humanitarian response interventions that they need to. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, I guess, interesting ways in which insurance, parametric insurance, can be deployed to help to sort of build the resilience, I guess, if you will, financial resilience, climate resilience, and also support ultimately the larger flows of capital that we all hope and need in the context of the NDCs and more broadly. So it's an area where, again, it's a very small sliver of the conservation and climate finance space, but in certain cases, we do see that it can add tremendous value, and happy to discuss. And I'm just, super excited to hear, particularly about Niue's amazing new approach. And thank you again for having me today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So that I think we can conclude on that. I wanted to pose one question each to each of the panelists, but I think in the interest of time we can skip that. If my takeaway, but any of the panelists most feel free to jump in. between now and 31, we have space. I think we take that for granted. Second, that the Pacific is brimming with the ideas for raising ambition, and you saw two very practical examples. So this is not an empty ocean space. They're taking significant strides, thinking those things through. Third is that they remain deeply frustrated with the global system. Climate finance is beginning to flow. Blue finance is certainly not beginning to flow. In any case, for the Pacific, it's excess to 0.22%, which is a increase of from 0.19, right, over the. That's what Pacific has to be thankful for. And Sarah's intervention is very significant because many of the announcements that you have heard that you may be, wowed by here at COP28, they will simply not apply in small-scale settings, right? So there are fantastic numbers being thrown about, and the Pacific really needs to think very smartly. Parametric insurance is one of the ways if we can protect our resources from climate catastrophes and incomes and livelihoods as well from climate catastrophes through smart de-risking instruments. That would be a good way to build the constituency of support for raising our ambition. And in taking forward, I will share notes with Ileana, Ambassador for Palau. I hope that she'll be convening discussions to practically populate some of the ideas. We in APT, and I know all of us in the ocean community, will be very, very passionate about helping Pacific raise the bar. And by the time you invite the world to COP31, I hope that every country will come with an NDC that is substantially enhanced in its blue component. Otherwise, as former Prime Minister said, they should not be packing their suitcases. So thank you very much for a fantastic evening, and thank you all again to the panelists. If I can have the panelists for a photo so we know that this event actually happened also. Naka.